from his studios in New York, it's time for Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, where sports meets life. Here's your host, Dan Tortora.
We have on the line with us here Mr. Rob Konrad. Rob is just called into the show. We got him set and ready to go here on the broadcast. So we come out of the annoying moment of the week, proudly presented by Carvel DeWitt, which once again was Antonio Brown. And we step in Charney's Menswear and Tuxedo Studios here on 3150 Erie Boulevard East in Syracuse, New York, into our segment Significant Sound Bites, where we spotlight someone every single week. That person we're spotlighting this week is Rob Konrad. More than anything, we're happy that Rob is safe and sound after the hurricane came through Florida and has now found its way, hopefully will be stopping, sputtering out, and not affecting anybody else. But you know, my family in St. Augustine and Papa Joe on the show yesterday describing what they went through and what's going on there. And now we're happy to know that we have Rob here on the broadcast, and hopefully all is well. Rob, how are we doing today?
Hey, Dan, how are you, buddy?
Doing very well. And Rob, you know, first and foremost, how was the storm and everything that went on? I know you said that, you know, you had to be evacuated, that the office had to be. Just what went on down there? Is everybody okay? Kind of, you know, what's been the aftermath of it?
Yeah, you know, I've been down here 20 some odd years now, and in South Florida, I guess 20 years now since I was drafted down here, and you kind of get used to the routine, if you will, of preparing and what I like to call dodging hurricanes. And we got really lucky. I ended up actually packing my family up, running up to another SU alum, Malindo Mare, who played with me in Syracuse and then Miami. He's got a place up in the West North Carolina, so went up there and got to spend kind of a nice Labor Day weekend with them, which was nice. But unfortunately, just 60 miles away from where we live in the west end of the Bahamas, it's just it's like Armageddon. It's really sad, and there's a lot of efforts here to get aid over to those folks, and a lot of folks coming this way. So it's a really unfortunate situation, and it's kind of scary to see how close that came to hitting South Florida, and certainly we feel like we dodged a bullet. The storm really wasn't too bad here, but tough situation for those in the Bahamas. Tough place to ride out of the storm.
No, absolutely, and just like you said, there's efforts out there. What have you seen being done and whatnot? I mean, I actually had this conversation yesterday about when I went to Hurricane Katrina relief and went down to New Orleans to help out there, and the government really didn't provide much of anything to those people, at least not from what we could see. And so we went down and we helped them try to rebuild their lives. Have you seen efforts? Have there been efforts down in Florida and the Bahamas, or is it kind of everybody for themselves again? I mean, what's been done as far as relief?
Yeah, there's been a bunch of guys I know that we've been putting together, supplies and trying to run them over on the boats. The biggest problem we've had has been twofold. Is that there's a lot of debris in the ocean right now, so running boats over there is difficult with the amount of stuff floating around, hitting props and just having a clean run over. The second part is there's really the ports of entry, the airport, they're all destroyed. So to try to get a clean entry onto land is difficult for governments and individuals alike. So I know there's a lot of people scrambling, doing their best right now, and it's just a really, really difficult situation.
And for you, like you said, you're trying to help out. Why? I guess the whys are always there, because in a world that seemingly likes to kind of focus on itself, and it's become a very much a me society to a lot of people. What makes you go and reach your hand out to a stranger?
Well, listen, I think from our standpoint, there is a lot of connectivity between where I live in South Florida and the Bahamas in general, especially the west end of Nassau. I live right near Palm Beach, and it's literally 60 miles away. And it's a lot of folks here have second houses over there. There's a lot of a lot of family that are over there. There's just a lot of connectivity. So, but I think it's the feeling of loss is certainly here and it's present. And if you have the ability to do it, most people are trying to help out in any way they can.
And for you, Rob, speaking here with Rob Konrad, Syracuse Orange football alum and NFL alum as well, you had your own story, and it was carried from so many different places. And I remember my dad calling me and saying, "Did you hear what happened with Rob Konrad?" And it was just it's been everywhere. And to go back to that kind of moment. You're helping people that you don't want to give up. You're reaching out to people right now in the Bahamas, in South Florida, that you want to hold on. And in your case, you had that yourself in your own unique way to hold on and to not give up. Going back to that story, now that there's been some time that's passed, just what you can say. I mean, 4 years, a little over 4 years ago, just your own story of adversity and overcoming that, and something that most people will never have to go through.
Yeah, I certainly hope not. That was a tough one, and I'm glad I didn't know what was in front of me before it happened. But look, I'll say for what it's worth, my boat that day ended up in the west end of the Bahamas without me.
Yeah,
it made a trip over there without me to show you how close it is over there. But I'm obviously a very different situation, and my experience was really unique, and one we could have a conversation about at a later date. But a lot of life lessons certainly, changes your perspective on waking up every day and getting to see your friends and your family and all the good things that are out there on a daily basis. It's really been life changing for me in a positive way, but yeah, no, it was one heck of a deal, and glad I had an opportunity to be here today and speaking with you and doing all the things we get to do every day.
Absolutely. As we talk here with Rob Konrad, Syracuse Orange football alum and NFL alum, and would definitely like to spend some time on that story, like you said, at a later date to really just describe that. I mean, wake up call is where sports meets life, and the easiest way to describe what that means is to say we use sports as a vehicle to bring people together, because life in general is full of a lot of amazing things that need to be talked about, and being a positive voice in the community for us is paramount. Rob, for you, Syracuse, to get into this, I know you and I last week were going to talk about the season that we have here, and then the storm hit, so we have an opportunity to do that today, and I appreciate you doing that for us. And just what your take is kind of going into it for this season before we get into Liberty and Maryland and all that good stuff, just what your take has been coming out of last year into this year. I mean, you and I met last year at the Florida State game, and we got to sit down, we got to do a show together, and it was a true honor for me because you're one of the players I'd wanted to talk to since I was a little kid. And so to be able to do that was great. You got to be around the program, you got to be back in Syracuse, and that season, Dino goes 10-3 with this team. Just what your overall sense of the team was last year, seeing them go from 3-9, 3 seasons of 4-8, to finally get to 10-3.
Yeah, look, from my standpoint, I've become a really big fan. First and foremost, John Wildcat has done, I think, an amazing job as an AD. I've been away from the program for some time, and he, reached out and kind of, brought me back in and, let me, spend a little bit of time with Dino, and they got to know the group. And I couldn't be happier. I love what Dino's doing. I think he's the right guy at the right place at the right time. I couldn't have been happier with the way the team, prepared. You look a couple of years back, they won some big games, but they didn't know how to handle success. That wasn't around, hasn't been around for a long time. I think you look at probably the 87 through 98 time frame where it was expected. I mean, when I came in there, we expected to win. We expected to be good. That culture, it takes a while to turn around the culture in a football team. And I think, we'll see. But, you saw that last year they were able to, consistently be very good and occasionally great, which is terrific. And see, let's see if that culture, continues within the program and with these players. And that's really what it takes to, have those expectations, walk on the field, expect to win, not hope to win. And prepare in that fashion. So I couldn't be happier. I mean, to the point I actually ended up hopefully I'll be able to get up for a few of the games. I actually bought boxes here in the Dome. So, I'm real excited about the program and where they're going. And, a lot of the alumni, as you probably have seen in the last few years, are quite happy with the progress and have been coming back and supporting the program. So it's exciting time for Syracuse football. Couldn't be happier with the people in place, and just want to see things continue.
Yeah, and to see that, like you said, to see the alumni that are excited and ready to see this team continue to grow and continue to blossom. All good things take time. There's a lot of impatience in the world we live in today because we live in a society where people expect things instantaneously. What can you say about the job that Dino's done? Because he came in, and this is his 4th season with the team, but he came in a while back, and I'll never forget where I was sitting. I'm sitting on press row. I was kitty corner to one of the baskets, and Dino came onto the court for a Syracuse men's basketball game. And I remember he was wearing his jacket, and he grabbed that microphone, and he said, I need y'all to have something. I need y'all to have faith, belief without evidence. I need you to have that faith in us, faith in these young men, belief without evidence that we're going to get it done. And 4-8 happens, and 4-8 happens, and then 10-3 happens. What can you say about faith, belief without evidence, and the fact that Dino stepped into Syracuse and said, we're going to do this. You just have to believe in it before you see it.
Yeah. So, I was on the coaching search committee with Howland Schnellenberger. You probably know that name if the audience might not. He's Hall of Fame, college coach down here, coached at University of Miami before Jimmy Johnson. When we were looking for the coach, and this was a brand new college program down here in Florida, and he made the commentary. He said, look, more than anything else, even from a coaching standpoint, you need a music man. You kind of need the Pied Piper. You need a confidence man to come in here and build up expectation and belief in the program. That's going to lead to the recruiting. The football part of it's going to come next. I always found that interesting. And with Dino, he was a confidence man, and I think that's what this place needed. He put a stake in the ground and said, we're going to be great again. And that hasn't been done for a long time. And I think you can look back to that and the way he's led this program, these kids, to be able to believe that Syracuse can be dominant football program again. And it's been the right guy in the right place and the right time. And we've come from A to B, and now the tough part is taking that next step and being consistent with it, which is never an easy thing, especially in today's college football. But you couldn't be happier with the way things have progressed so far. And last year, I think it just created so much energy. I think I heard maybe the Carrier Dome have their largest season ticket sales in 20 years or something along those lines. So hopefully it'll be exciting to come watch games in the Carrier Dome again and kind of bring back some of the days when Donnie McPherson, Donovan McNabb, Marvin Graves, those guys were roaming the field.
Yeah, and to see that, to see the fact that so many people are excited about this game, it's a sellout game that they have here, and that is something that I have not heard in forever. So, for you as an alum of the program, speaking here with Rob Konrad, for you to be connected so closely to this program and be a part of the rich history and put on that jersey like everybody else is doing right now, the jerseys might look a little bit different, but it's the same old orange and blue. To hear that we have a sellout in the Carrier Dome, just what went through your mind and through your heart when you heard that news? Because it's been what feels like an eternity of hearing that the Dome is going to be packed for a game.
Sure. I'll say this. I'm coming to the game. I'm bringing my family up there, and part of it was I wanted my kids to kind of experience what a game is like in the Dome back when we played. And it's been a while. I remember when they retired 44 a few years back. I think we had played South Florida at Jim Brown, Floyd Little in the building, and there were 25,000, 30,000 people in the Dome, and I think we lost to South Florida. And I think that was the last time my kids were in the Dome. I wanted them to come and experience and see what it's like when that place is packed and loud, and how exciting and electric it can be. It's exciting to hear. I will say this. this upcoming game against Maryland is I'm concerned about it. It's my coach Dave Wanstead with the Dolphins. We used to laugh at him, but every time a game like this came up, he used to hang lobster traps all over our locker room.
Yeah.
And but just to keep in mind that if you don't win this week, it really doesn't matter what happens next week. And I know I'd see some interviews. Some of the players kept talking about the Clemson game, and this Maryland game is going to be a tough game. And for that to be truly a meaningful big game, I think they've got to take big care of business this week, which is it'll be a tough game on the road.
Yeah, and that's the thing is you don't want to overlook it. I'm like you. I am concerned about this because, well, a big reason why I'm concerned is that it's on the road. I mean, Mike Locksley, his history as a head coach, he was with New Mexico for 2009. He went 1-11. 2010, he went 1-11. 2011, he went 0-4. Then he came to Maryland. He coached for 5 games, went 1-5, and now he's a head coach again with Maryland. So his record's not going to show it, but this is a game that's on the road. Maryland is one of those teams that's been a litmus test in the past to kind of figure out, are you above the equator, are you below the equator? So for me, looking at this, if this was played in the Carrier Dome, then I would feel a little bit better about it. But the fact that it's being played in Maryland is a little bit of a concern. What can you say about the fact that you can't overlook any opponent? You know this, and people say it's coach speak all the time, which annoys the heck out of me because it's reality. If you look at week 3 in week 2, or you look at week 7 in week 2, you're not going to get there the way that you want to get there. So just what your take is on being a former player and knowing the fact that it's not just coach speak. You can't look past an opponent ever, especially when you're going into their home.
Football is a game of emotion, and I think when you're able to become a professional and you're taught and you need to play at an extremely high level all the time, you learn to manage those emotions to try to never get too high or too low in any given situation. But it's human nature to look forward to big events, and it's coach speak because they've lived it and they've seen it. But it's natural for to have a big Clemson game. It's sold out. Everybody's excited about it. They're thinking about playing their best game on that stage. And here you have a tough opponent on the road that is maybe less exciting to play in that particular game. And it's natural to want to look past that at what might be coming up in the future. And it's tough to do, especially with young kids who haven't been there before. So I think Dino knows this. He's been doing this for a long time. He knows how to to prep and talk to the kids and make sure that they're in a good place. I got to be honest with you. I had the opportunity to watch a Liberty game. I think that might have been a good thing. I think there's some holes, things I'm concerned about, but I think it's good they didn't come just walk all over Liberty and kind of think that they're going to waltz through this Maryland game. I think there's some real questions that were raised and things that need to be fixed, and hopefully that'll be worked on this week and be improved upon heading into this game, and possibly there'll be a little bit more focus relative to what's going on this week than possibly looking towards the future.
Yeah, and Mike Locksley on the other side of it here, speaking on this week in the matchup, him being the head coach of Maryland, he comes from being the Alabama offensive coordinator, being under Nick Saban. So obviously this is no slouch as a coach, and like I said, his record might not show it as a head coach, but his experience has been tremendous, and he has been at the nation's highest level with being with a team like Alabama and having the players that he's had. So I can only imagine the fact that Mike Locksley is more than prepared to go up, because I know Howard's not going to be a true sign of what they were playing their third stringers at the end of the game for Maryland. They won 79-0. So I know that that's not a true sign by any stretch of the imagination of who is Maryland really. But Mike Locksley is a guy who's a talented coach who obviously has a great reputation, or else you don't get hired with a guy like Nick Saban giving you an opportunity on that team.
You know what? He's been known over the years as a guy who's a great recruiter. And, look, Maryland has some talent. I think if I remember correctly, they took Ohio State down to the wire last year, which is tough to do. And Ryan Day is a buddy of mine. Remember him talking previously about how talented the team is at spots. They've just not played all that well from they're not a terribly well coached team, but they have some players. And if I remember correctly, I think they brought in a significant amount of transfers from other major programs. So they're going to have some talent. And I think the Orange will have their hands full from a talent standpoint. I think the good thing is, look, Syracuse looked like they have a very talented defense. They're looking like they're playing with some confidence, in the secondary, which is great. Have some, great defensive ends that can put pressure on the quarterback and push the pocket. They've got a strong kicking and special teams games. You play great defense and good special teams, that'll take you a long way. The thing for me that was just glaringly obvious was twofold. Syracuse's offensive line had a real hard time, getting any movement against Liberty, which was concerning, and they had a hard time protecting the pocket. If they're going to have any success throwing or running the football against more talented teams, so they're going to have to improve their play on the offensive line. It's my understanding. I think they've been moving some kids around, or maybe there's been some injuries, but that jumped off the TV when I was watching the game.
Yeah, and this offensive line is obviously an offensive line that, it does feature some guys like Evan Adams and Sam Heckel and, some of the guys that had been in Aaron Service that had been there before. But the offensive line took such a long time to build into what it became last season, and people don't pay attention to that. It's so much is focused on the quarterback. I mean, out of every question that I've asked to the fans, Syracuse fans, after the game, during the game, going into this game, the thing that I see more than anything else in everyone's responses is Tommy DeVito this, Tommy DeVito that. There's a focus on the quarterback. There's a focus, obviously, on the defense because they played well. There's a focus on the skill guys, but there's not a lot of time spent on the defensive and offensive line. And George O'Leary, who used to be at Syracuse and went on to UCF and whatnot, when him and I sat down, I'll never forget what he said. He said, as a coach, you got to build from the trenches out. You got to build from the offensive and defensive line out. If you don't know as a coach that you win a championship in the trenches, then you probably shouldn't be coaching. If you don't get that, then you don't get anything. So this offensive line had grown over time. I had watched this thing grow the last 3, 4, 5 years into what it was last season, and now you have round robin, and Aaron Service told me during fall camp, he said, we're all just kind of playing everywhere, where nobody has a dedicated position. We're trying to figure out who's best here, who's best there. So Service is the center on the depth chart, but then Sam Heckel takes over there, and Evan Adams is the right guard, and he's been there forever. Now he's the left guard, and then this guy's new, and this guy shifts. So I think the offensive line, like I told people going into the season, my 3 biggest questions are what Tommy DeVito is going to do as the outright leader, what the offensive line is going to do, and what the linebacker core is going to do. And you just brought up one of those things, that this offensive line is going to have to find some chemistry because they've been all over the place. And like Aaron Service said, if you got no dedicated guy in one area, that's because you're not confident 100% that that's where he should be. So this line is going into the season still trying to find each player's niche and obviously trying to find some chemistry.
Yeah. And look, on the offensive line, you need 1 or 2 guys that can get movement off the ball, and that'll create seams. And if you can run the football, you can play action enough where you can create some creative blocking schemes. And Dino is very good at this, to be able to block up the line and give Tommy the time to throw it down the field. Listen, DeVito is a very, very gifted passer. The passing game is all about timing and spacing, and it was off. It was just off. And it's hard. You don't know what you don't know. You don't know if the receiver misread things, if the ball was underthrown, what have you. But just as a pure passer, DeVito can throw the football. But it's going to take some time for things to gel a little bit. But clearly, to me, the offensive line not being able to get a lot of movement in the run game and or protect the passer was a big issue, and then the timing and the spacing of the passing game, which also is a part of not being able to run the football and or not run the football consistently, and not being able to protect the passer certainly creates some back end issues there. But I think from what I've seen from Tommy, if he can work in this consistency a little bit, I think he has a chance to be a very good football player for a long time for the Orange.
Yeah, and there is that belief that Tommy obviously has the talent to do it. I believe that he does. I mean, something that stuck out to me last season was how he came onto the field and relieved Eric Dungy, comes out onto the field, and immediately drops back, sets his feet, and bombs a 60-plus yard pass down the field. I mean, this man doesn't come out like he's cold. He doesn't come out needing to warm up. He's warm all the time when it looks like something like that. He's got a lot of confidence in himself, a lot of confidence in his ability. So that's something that I think will build over time. But, you know, like I told everybody, even though he's had his good days and he's done good things out there when he's been in relief, when you become a starter, it's different. And, I mean, can you speak to that at all? That, you know, when you have the experience, obviously that helps you. But when you know that there's nobody in front of you and it's your job, you know, does it do something to your psyche? Because it seems like when you have that, okay, well, you know what, I'm coming in for quarters 3 and 4, that's a lot different than saying, I got 12 games ahead of me, hopefully more than that, and I'm the guy. I mean, just what you can say about the transition of I'm a relief guy, and now I'm the person.
Yeah, you know what? Maybe I could speak personally. I mean, I played my true freshman year and played all 4 years at Syracuse. And I played with William McNabb for our 4 years. And maybe the best thing is to kind of look at his progression. But when you're young and especially the quarterback position, you have a lot on you. It's not only especially with a complex system, getting everybody in the right place, having the right calls, making the right leads, but everybody's looking at you. It's at the end of the day, you're the leader of this team. A guy like Dan Marino. Look, Dan obviously was very, very gifted, but he came in the huddle and he was just he was your alpha. Everybody was on off of his energy, his confidence, and when he was on and he was had his attitude going, everybody played at a higher level, and you just felt it through the emotion, the energy throughout the huddle. And that's learned. Tommy's been a backup. He's come in and spelled and played at high levels, but it's that leadership role and the expectation that you're going to be excellent at everything you do all the time. And if things, turn sideways, you're going to be the guy to come in and make a play. And it's, that's learned. And I saw that progression playing with Don through our 4 years where, early on we were freshmen and, we were, doing everything we were doing. We had a lot of success, but you really started to see it with Don his junior, especially his senior year, where he's just a different guy. And it's learned, it's part of the process. It's from, making mistakes and having success. But, I think it'll come with time. And, he's a young guy and he's got a lot on his plate right now, but I think he has a chance to be pretty good, as we go forward. Absolutely.
And speaking here with Rob Konrad on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora inside of the Charney's Menswear and Tuxedo Studios here on 3150 Erie Boulevard East in Syracuse, New York. Rob, before I let you go, biggest question mark on the team this season? I mean, we talked about a bunch of stuff here, but overall, biggest question mark for you this season, and on the other side of it, the biggest positive for the team this year?
Yeah, for me, and I've talked about it, is just, can the consistency with the offensive line of the passing game, can those things come together? It was not pretty early on. I guess that's why you play an early game and don't open up against, a Tennessee or Michigan or someone. But, can those things come together? Because, if you put that together and you get Dino's passing game in play with that defense, I think they're going to have a chance to be pretty good. And listen, I'm excited from what I see on defense. They've got some talented players. They're playing with confidence, playing with attitude, and like I said before, you play great defense and special teams, it'll keep you in a lot of football games. So I'm excited to see what they can do this upcoming week.
Yeah, and knowing that they have Clemson hanging here in the background, just as a former football player and as a fan, College Game Day. I was looking at what could be for College Game Day, what they could have, what could be going on, and there's a few games that are happening in Week 3. There's Florida, Kentucky, there's Iowa, Iowa State, there's Pittsburgh and Penn State, and there's Clemson and Syracuse. 2 years ago, Clemson comes into the Carrier Dome, reigning national champion, and Syracuse defeats them. And some people saw it, but a lot of people nationally did not because they probably thought nothing of it. Does College Game Day, in your opinion, have a choice when you think of Iowa, Iowa State, Pitt, Penn State, and Florida, Kentucky, or should it be Clemson and Syracuse outright?
I don't know. Maybe I'm a little jaded on the subject matter, but especially given ESPN's close ties to the university and what's gone on here in the last few years, the fact Davo's come out and said point blank the biggest team that we've had problems with in the ACC is by far been Syracuse. I don't know why they wouldn't be here for this game. So, but it's a good thing I'm not an exec at ESPN.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it makes the most sense to put it out there and, obviously to have them here. And it would be the first time that they would be here. So, and the game's already going to be on ABC. It's at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Final piece, Rob, just the NFL is back. You were a part of the NFL. You were a part of, obviously, Syracuse history. We're in full swing with both. I can't believe that the NFL is already upon us. We've already had our first game. What are you most excited about? How much do you stay connected to, the Dolphins down in Florida and whatnot? Just what you can say about, the football season in general and if you're a Dolphin through and through to this day.
Yeah. So I actually sit on the board of the Miami Dolphin Foundation, which is the team's charitable arm, and so I'm quite close to the organization down here, and one of our businesses that we're involved is, and we do a few different things, but part of it is we're involved with family office and wealth management services for coaches and players in various sports. We work with 4 or 5 NFL head coaches, like 5 or 6 starting quarterbacks in the NFL. So there's a bunch of teams that players that we're close with. So we stay we stay involved. It's kind of a fun thing for me to stay involved with it. The Dolphins are going through a whole nother cycle right now. I mean, they're obviously traded away a lot of their quote unquote talented players, and they're building up draft picks, a la Patriots over the years to have some firepower going into the draft. And I don't think there's a terrific amount of excitement for what's going down here in Miami right now. I'll always be a supporter, of the team, but it's been tough for a while, but they're hopefully taking a step back so they can take a step forward. But it's a real exciting year for the NFL. It's their 100th anniversary, and given a lot of things that have been going on, with throughout and within the league, I think it's a exciting year, and I think people are pretty excited for football to be back.
Yeah, we're seeing obviously the fact that Mark Walton, who has connections to Miami in general, he's on the team. Kalen Ballage and Kenyon Drake. You were in the backfield for the Miami Dolphins. Is there anybody out there that makes you excited? I mean, Myles Gaskin was drafted late. There's a thought that he could, leapfrog a couple guys. Is there anything in the backfield that you're excited about, or are you happy to have Josh Rosen after he spent seemingly 14 minutes in Arizona? I mean, what's your take about that?
Yeah, listen, the Josh Rosen situation, I think that it was a good value pick for them to make the trade. I think there's a lot that needs to be proven on his part if he can be high quality quarterback in the NFL. If I had to guess, I would say that the Dolphins will still be in the market for a QB come the draft next year. But it's going to be tough for them. They got rid of a lot and traded away a lot of their higher level players in the team, and looked at those couple different things. And it's just from I talked before about football being an emotional game. That's hard to overcome when when there's been a message being sent from the top brass that we're kind of not really expecting you to be competitive this year, and yet you're asked to go and sacrifice your body on the field to go play this game. So it's going to be a tough year. I wouldn't want to be a player on the Dolphins this year. It's going to be tough to have in the back of your mind all year long.
And the last thing I wanted to speak with you about, Rob, you actually made it. We host trivia here at Dominick's Restaurant every Wednesday at 7 in Syracuse, and we did some Syracuse football trivia. So you were one of my questions. I felt the need to do it to ask the people who the last person officially was in Syracuse football history to wear the number 44. You wore it. You wore it well, in my opinion, from 95 to 98. Just what you can say about that. I mean, the history of 44 started, and some people don't know this because you think about Jim Brown. It started back in 1921 with Gifford Zimmerman wearing it. Jim Brown didn't don it until 1954. Just, your take of it, that you got to wear it, you got to have that in history, and since then, no one has touched 44 at Syracuse.
Sure, yeah. Listen, it was a big thing for me. I mean, it was always my number. It was, I was, lucky enough to be a very highly recruited player at a high school in Massachusetts, and had offers from, Stanford, USC, Notre Dame, Michigan, what have you. And, for me, that was a big deal. The reason I went to Syracuse to, be the first fullback to wear that number. And certainly with those guys, with the history of it was, and has become even more meaningful as I've gotten to know Jim over the years and Floyd and understood the Ernie Davis story. And, it was a big deal for me. Paul Pasqualoni, basically told me when I came to the university, said, by wearing this number, you're giving yourself to the community, you're giving yourself to the school, and you have to do everything, cleaner and better than everybody else. And that's always stuck with me, and that's, something that I lived with for my 4 years there. I hope that certainly I made the community proud the way I played and wore the number, and it's been a big part of my life. So it's, as far as keeping the number retired or not, I always punt and defer that to Jim and Floyd. I think that's really, in their ballpark. If you're ever going to retire a number, it's certainly a number that should be, considered full time. I believe John created maybe a council of 44 that we'll be talking about coming up here as far as what's going to happen in the future. But I always defer to Jim and Floyd on the issue of which whether it should stay retired or not.
Yeah, and that is the biggest question: is it truly retired? Is it not truly retired? Where is the stance on it? Because they said that they were going to unretire it, but then there's paperwork to it and all that. So it's kind of this thing that's looming over Syracuse is this invisible 44 just kind of there, almost like a ghost. Is it there? Is it not? And so Jim Brown and Floyd Little, like you said, obviously a lot of respect for what they did with it, but you deserve it as well, Rob. And with that being said, I appreciate you being a part of the show today. I'm happy to know that you're safe and that your family's well, and hopefully you will not have to deal with much bad weather this hurricane season, and hopefully we can get through that seamlessly, and the Bahamas and everybody that needs the help can get it. But thank you for what you're doing for the community, and thank you for what you do for Syracuse as well.
Yeah, appreciate it, Dan, and look forward to seeing you up there in a couple weeks.
All right, sounds good. I'll see you soon.
Take care.